Hi everybody, this is Teresa Babin-Lincoln, and this is my midterm project on one of my favorite platforms, Wikipedia. So what is Wikipedia? What is it used for? And why did I choose Wikipedia? So Wikipedia is a combination of two specific terms, wiki, meaning quick in Hawaiian, and encyclopedia. Encyclopedia Britannica, our traditional encyclopedia, defines a wiki as a specific style of collaborative software that's put together in a fast fashion that allows users to have equal editing access across a platform that doesn't need to be written in computer code. Wikipedia, the platform we know and love, is a user-generated online encyclopedia. And what makes Wikipedia unique as an encyclopedia is that it's crowdsourced for information to gather credible references about a topic instead of being published peer review articles. And the Wikipedia that we're familiar with has been around since 1995 and is one of the most visited websites across the world. So what is Wikipedia used for? One of my favorite terms that I came across when I was researching this is Wikipedia as a knowledge landscape and as a reference web. Wikipedia is best used as an information landscape, meaning that the knowledge that spans across all subject areas, multiple cultures, and many languages. Because Wikipedia is set up to cite credible references, all of those references are also cited and hyperlinked, meaning Wikipedia is not only a platform for information, but a huge web of resources. There are two main categories of users. I think most of us fall into the first category of information seekers, but some people on here may also fall into the other category as editors. And as an information seeker, Wikipedia is one of the best and the easiest starting points to gather information. Almost every noun in most languages has a specific Wikipedia page that gives information. When you start in a Google search, there's a little box that pops up over on the side, on the right-hand side, that's pulling a quick snapshot of info from Wikipedia itself. So why I chose Wikipedia. Wikipedia is something that I've been using for a really long time. One of the most difficult classes I've ever taken in college round one about 10 years ago, I was taught by an ichthyology, a fish professor. And I don't remember most of the subject, but I do remember the lessons she taught us about learning to learn and to research. And so before we had a big term paper due, it was a small class, it was about 10 of us, but before we had this big term paper due, she was asking us how it was going and asked who had used Wikipedia for their project. And nobody fessed up. Like, no, we know this is a trap. Wikipedia is not a credible reference. And she called us all foolish for not using Wikipedia in our projects. And she continued to explain how valuable Wikipedia is because everything on there is easy to read. It's all in plain English, unlike most of the peer-reviewed articles we were all linking and referencing in our papers. She showed us how to grow our understanding using all of the tools that Wikipedia has integrated through some of these kind of rabbit holes that you can go down and click all of these links because of the web of references. And then she also gave us kind of a quick rundown on how the editing process works. And she went in as an anonymous user, edited some of her own published work as a leading professor in her field. And within 24 hours, that information had been changed by other people. So that's how fast things are staying up to date. And no, Wikipedia is not a credible reference, but it is a fantastic place to start. All right. So different ways to use Wikipedia. Wikipedia is one of the easiest platforms to use if you know how to use a Google search bar and you can read in your given language. You can use Wikipedia. It's a fantastic platform. It's been translated into over 300 languages, so there really isn't much of a barrier as long as you can read and have access to the internet. And where it gets interesting is when we come in here and we look at Wikipedia's uses in communication. As an information seeker, you're just reading. There's not much collaboration or communication. But in this communication tab, this is where we've got different tabs. And put a little picture down here on the bottom. I know it's kind of hard to see. But in the bottom here in this little screenshot, there's the article tab. There's a read tab. There's an edit tab. There's usually a talk tab. there's a history tab, and there's a tools tab. And that's where communication all happens. Now, in order to make some of these edits, so editing here. So in order to make some of these edits, you don't have to have a login. You don't have to have a username. There is a hierarchy of accounts, and that's what's listed over here in the slides. But anybody can do this from any computer. And it's as simple as going into that Talk tab or into that Edit tab, and you just get text boxes. And all you're doing is typing in your regular text. Now, to go in and edit, you do need to know a little bit more about computers, but again, it's not in code. You're not coding anything. So it's a very easy platform. And I actually found I'm going to share my screen because in a different project I was working on, I found a Wikipedia page that I want to start a conversation on. So I'm going to pull up my screen here in a minute and kind of walk through the process of how to start a discussion in Wikipedia. Okay, so this is what I found. I've got my screen share up, and this is the Wikipedia page on humpback whales. So we're just going to come in here, and this is what I saw. And this kind of threw me for a loop. But this conservation status over here, and in this little bubble, this agency is SITS, which is an agency I don't know, but has them listed as conservation status at least concern. So when I looked up SITS here, I found, maybe it won't load quick enough for me, but I did find that SITS, these guys are an international agency. So I thought that was interesting because what I know as an American marine biologist is that so it's the U.S. Department of Fish and Game or Fish and Wildlife that designates and keeps track of our endangered species. That I know as a scientist. I also know that U.S. Fish and Game delegates that authority for marine mammals to NOAA, who I will come back on. I will share the screen through NOAA. So this is NOAA's screen that I have up, and NOAA is our National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration here in the States. And what I see with them is that their conservation status is still listed as endangered. Now, I know in 2016 there was a lot of changes for humpback whales, and I will spare you the details because this is not about whales, but they were listed as separate populations, not subspecies, but as separate population segments like I have highlighted here, and 4 of them are still protected as endangered. So that's what I found, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here. And I went on to find a bunch of other stuff that backed up that I'm pretty sure are my credible references. They were all Code of Federal Regulations, so it's published by the U.S. government. And what I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and start a conversation in Wikipedia and get this ball rolling because I think this is information that if the American stuff is being left out, I'd like to know why. And if it's not, I'd like to have it added in because I do think it's important information. So give me just a moment and I'll pull up the Wikipedia screen where I'll show you where I can go through and click through how to start that discussion. Okay, so here we are back on our humpback whale tab. This is the article tab, so this is what we're reading. And I'm going to go in. I can see that this is locked. All edits by unregistered and new users are subject to review, and that's fine. I'm a new user. So I'm going to come in, instead of this edit tab, I'm going to come into this talk tab here. And as this pulls up, I'll show you what we're going to be looking at. So the tab over here, this has pending revisions and conversations that are already going. I can see that this is a featured article, so there's already been a lot of eyes on here. It was a featured article in 2004, so that was way before, almost 10 years before this decision. So needed review, and I didn't see anything about our conservation status. Pending revisions, I didn't see anything about our conservation status or NOAA at all. So I'm going to come all the way down, I'm going to come up here, and I am going to start a discussion. I'm going to click here to start a new topic, and all I get is a subject bar like I'm writing an email. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this out off camera, and I'll keep you updated as to how this goes, if I get anything back. So next, just briefly, I wanted to talk about some pros and cons of Wikipedia. I think the biggest advantage and disadvantage is that Wikipedia is user-generated content and that it's not peer-reviewed. One of the pros of that is this is a news source that is 100% faster than everything else. Wikipedia can be updated in real time, 24 hours 7, around the clock, regardless of time zone. And all of this stuff can be cited immediately. Unfortunately, a downfall to that is that there's higher potential to introduce bias, either accidentally or intentionally, to include misinformation or out of date information, or to omit information completely. Again, not usually done maliciously, but it does happen. A huge pro is that editors can be anybody. You get to remain anonymous. If you're not a user, it's just your IP address that shows. And if you are a user, all it is your username and a profile that you generate on your own. Just like I showed you, I was able to go through a process as a non-advanced degree holder, as a non-expert in the field. And that never would have happened in a university setting. But I get to have a voice in a Wikipedia platform. I found a fantastic podcast hosted by Tech Talk that talked a lot about the biases that accidentally get introduced in a user-generated content platform like this one. Professor Langrock spoke about the measurable gender bias, and that for four biographies on men, there's typically one biography on a woman. So that really does show that there is a significant amount of gender bias. She assumes that there's probably a racial bias as well, but again, because they're anonymous usernames, that's not always disclosed. She also went on to talk about a concept they call sock puppets. A sock puppet is a single user or a group of users that gets together and they start rapid firing, citing each other, citing some of these sort of false walls, and all at once, and blasting information that where they're able to get information as a cited credible source, even though it's under a false pretense. And she said that is particularly prevalent during an election year or during high profile political events. And that's one of the biggest jobs that the admin users have. 3 main recommendations that I have for Wikipedia to improve as a platform. One thing would be empowering more people like us, students or young professionals, to make their own edits. And that this is something that absolutely anybody can do. That's not something I really knew about before I went through this project even. I've been using Wikipedia for years, so I wish that was a little bit more. I wish the little guy on the ground was a little bit more empowered. I would love to see an increase of diversity in editors. Something, for example, on that humpback whale page, there's nothing in there from the Native Alaskan community, typically marginalized community in history, and there's nothing about the cultural impacts of a humpback whale. There's nothing in there that Alaskan Native communities are one of the only communities that get to violate American laws because the humpback whale is so embedded in their culture. I don't think that's information that needs to be omitted. I don't think that's information that was omitted on purpose. And I think that kind of leads to my third recommendation, is that one of the reasons Wikipedia may not have as many of those orally told stories or some of these culturally important stories in history is that Wikipedia is very strict about having a credible site, and that has to be a published article. And if they were able to lax a little bit, and like a journalist, use an informational interview as a credible source, maybe we would get some of that oral history and some of that passed down history that hasn't been preserved, or certainly hasn't been preserved publicly. And maybe Wikipedia could make a big change in that. And lastly, as I wrap up here, I wanted to talk about some of the communication theories that I saw that are pretty intertwined in Wikipedia. The first one is the warranting construct theory. And they talk a lot about, and our text talks a lot about, the perceived legitimacy and validity of users in a CMC environment. They talked more about how it would relate to starting in a CMC environment and moving into a face-to-face environment like you would in an online dating platform. But I do think it applies to a platform like Wikipedia. And I think if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and theory of motivation, it's one of my favorite theories, and we haven't talked about it much in this class yet. But since it's motivation, it's kind of intertwined into every part of who we are and how we live. And I think if we look at Maslow's and his higher levels, he talks about the self-actualization and the theories of motivation, where I really see a heightened relationship, that warranting construct of that relationship between the need to have accurate information and that trust for online users or people that you're not going to meet face to face, but you are interacting with. Wikipedia, I've learned, is a really collaborative platform. Really, these users do rely on trusting the platform, trusting the process, trusting the admins, and trusting one another. And when you go and kind of search some of those history tabs, you do see a relationship. You see a banter between some of these usernames, and I'd like to just kind of finish with that, and I hope that you've learned something about Wikipedia. I know I did learn quite a bit. I thank you for following along. I know I went a little bit over time, so thank you so much. I'm excited to see your presentations as well.